Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be going through UFC submissions. I'm going to put them into a tier list. S tier being the most effective and meta in the organization, to D tier being, yeah, you could get a tap with it, but I would argue it's not that useful. Before we begin, please consider a like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. You guys hold up your end of the bargain. I hold up mine. You subscribe. I give you daily MMA content every single day. Haven't missed a day since the start of December. Gonna keep going strong for the entire year. And with that out of the way, let's get started. Now, this is where we're gonna start off with, I would say, probably the most meta submission if you look at like the analytics of it. That is the rear naked choke. The rear naked choke, I believe off the top of my head, if you look at all strangles in the UFC, that being just, a normal choke, it makes up about half of all of them. It is the most recognizable submission in not just MMA, but in jiu-jitsu in general. Little interesting fact, though. So, the rear naked choke is the most common submission in the UFC. It is also the most common submission in gi jiu-jitsu. But I do believe in, no-gi jiu-jitsu, I believe it's the heel hook is the most effective as of this year. And we're going to get to the difference from no-gi jiu-jitsu to MMA, but I just thought that was a pretty nifty thing to bring up. I think you guys all know what a rear naked choke is. It's S tier just because it is the most effective. There is no not tapping to a rear naked choke, and most strangles in that order. However, it really is just everything works well for it. Next up is the Kimura. So, I know some people are going to get mad for this placement, but let me explain why. I'm going to put it in A tier. It's not an S tier in the way of you have to... Everybody's aware of a Kimura. Nobody wants to get Kimura, obviously. But if you can control your opponent to a good enough degree, even if you're off your back, you can hit Kimuras off your back. Just about every position that you can control the wrist and the elbow, you can hit a Kimura. The Kimura grip, I would argue, is probably one of the most useful grips in grappling. Both in, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, ADCC grappling matches, and even MMA. If you can get a Kimura grip on somebody, you control that. You control the entire upper body of your opponent. It's going to be an A tier, purely for that reason, and that you will tap to a Kimura. There is no not tapping to a Kimura. You will get your rotator cuff ripped to shreds if you do not tap to that. Off the top of my head, probably one of my favorite fighters that utilizes the Kimura is Sean Brady right now. Watch his fight with Calvin Gastelum. That is the adequate way to use the Kimura when you've controlled your opponent and gassed them out to a degree that you can just control their wrist and elbow. They're not going to have the energy to fight that. Next up is the ankle lock. Yup, I didn't just lump all leg locks together. I did a little bit for heel hooks, but I separated ankle locks and heel hooks because those are just completely different submissions. They really are. And the ankle lock is D tier, dude. Don't get me wrong, I'm aware that you can, I don't even want to say break somebody's foot, you can start snapping tendons and ligaments in your foot. I've messed up my foot in tournaments before because your boy just didn't want to tap to an ankle lock and I paid the price there. But here's the difference. I'll tap to an ankle lock if I'm fighting for a $5 medal. If I'm fighting for thousands of dollars, bro, just break my foot. I do not care. It is also pretty rare, and they used to misidentify the ankle lock and heel hooks and put them together. So a lot of fights, when you look back, they would just classify it as a leg lock. But the difference between an ankle lock and a heel hook is just how effective it is. You can survive getting ankle locked. You can fight your way out of an ankle lock. A heel hook is slightly different, but I'm putting it in D tier. It's just not that effective. And if you're going to go put yourself at risk in this position, all leg locks put you at risk, just go for a heel hook. It's not that hard. It's just not super effective. If you get an ankle lock, your dude just doesn't have great pain tolerance. Or you have a squeeze like an ox. It's one of those two. The armbar. Okay. I'm going to say... I'm going to put it ahead of the Kimura on A tier, purely because a lot of people will use Kimuras to leverage into an armbar, because you can play triangles and more effective armbars off of this position. Like, people will give up Kimuras to go to an armbar. Not a lot of people give up armbars to go to Kimuras, and off an armbar, you can hit triangles. Like, an armbar is a better position to have unless you're already on top with a Kimura. They're also, I believe, one of the most common submissions in the UFC. As far as, like, joint locks go, armbar, I believe, is the most common. I'd have to look at it again. But probably the most well-known, and that's the reason I have this, is Demetrius Johnson flying armbar, which, if you haven't seen it, you probably have seen it. It's extremely common and viral. But, yeah, armbar's most definitely an A tier as far as joint locks go. The only thing that I would argue is, in the moment, some people just won't tap to armbars, but then just switch that to a triangle. I mean, Gracie said it best. A tough dude can resist getting tapped by an armbar, but it doesn't matter how tough you are. If you get strangled, you're going to sleep. So, yeah, I think armbar, just because of how good it is positionally, I have to put it in A tier, just above the Kimura. The Darce choke. So, this one's going to be a difficult one. I'm going to say Darce choke is probably a solid B tier. Yeah, I'm going to say a solid B tier. Purely because there's more effective submissions that you can hit from that position. And speaking of that, so there's a thought process in grappling that use position over submission. And the idea of that is when you are competing, it is better to use a submission that you can hit 50% of the time. Let's say I give you a guillotine and you're like 50% likely gonna hit it. Or you can use that guillotine to 100%, say, pass somebody's guard, go into a full mount, a better position. And off that guillotine, you can use that to get into a better submission for you. That's how I feel about a Darce choke. You can use a Darce choke to get a better position, but if you have a squeeze like a Khamzat Chimaev, you can hit it. Kevin Holland also hit this on Michael Chiesa. It's good. All of these are fairly good, except for some of the D tier, but we'll talk about that. These are all good submissions. You will tap somebody out with them. But it's easier to defend a Darce choke than it is to defend a Kimura in any of these. And if you are stuck in a Darce choke, like somebody is locking up a Darce choke on you, you can escape from it fully locked up. These, absolutely not. If somebody has your arm extended, you're probably going to snap your arm. You can technically get out of this, but you're just going to give up a position. And for that reason, I'm putting a Darce choke in B. It's pretty good. It's a good submission. Heel hooks. Now, I've lumped in all of the heel hooks. If you don't know, heel hooks are more of a family of submission instead of it being heel hook. You have inside, outside heel hooks. You also have a Mikey lock that we just haven't seen in the UFC, so that's why it's not on here. But heel hooks are most definitely above ankle locks. Because I might move it up to B tier by the end of the video. It depends how this looks, but I'm going to put it in C tier purely because if you mess up a heel hook, you have given up position. I do want to bring this up, though. The two people I want to bring up is Josemir Palhares and Ryan Hall. Two people that I feel like have utilized heel hooks to a almost masterful degree. Of course, the argument you can make against Palhares is he did this in an era of MMA that just wasn't at this level, and that's a good argument to make. But he ended people's careers with heel hooks. I understand part of that reason is he didn't let go of it, but I am sick and tired of people saying heel hooks don't work, just don't tap to a heel hook. No. You just don't do it good. It's as simple as that. You could end somebody's whole career with a heel hook. Like, it really is like that. Like, 2 of the 3 people that Josemir heel hooked in the UFC never fought again. Or they lost every other fight after that due to complications with their leg. Because they weren't getting paid enough for surgeries, dude. They just weren't. Ryan Hall. I remember when Ryan Hall was coming up, people were bringing up that they wanted to change some of the rule sets around heel hooks because you can't, look, say I have a heel hook on your leg, you can't kick me in the face as I'm cranking on your heel. Even though, like, logically, you You should. If I'm allowed to cripple you for the rest of your life, you should be allowed to kick me. But due to the rule set, I can crank on your leg and you have to punch me. And if I have a great angle on your leg and I'm already cranking, by the time that you are able to get an angle to hit me and you can't kick me, I've already torn apart your LCL, your MCL, your meniscus is gone. You're not going to walk for the next 6 months, and your MMA career is probably over. So I'm going to say C tier. I might move it up to a very low B tier by the end, but I can't argue with some of these. These are just better. The Guillotine. Okay. I'm going to say Guillotine is a solid B tier, and I might even put it above the Darce choke, because a Guillotine is a defensive submission. If somebody is sloppy with a takedown, they're sloppy with a single leg, or they're slow on the double leg, you're going to you have a solid guillotine attempt. For the sake of simplicity, I am lumping in all the different types of guillotines, that being a arm-in guillotine, high elbow, and just your standard guillotine. All of those are going to be in the same family. And I think if you round all of those together, that's going to be in B tier. What I said about a Darce choke, you can use a Darce choke to get into another position, goes double for guillotines. You can start off with a headlock, go into a guillotine, get full mount, and there's so many other things you can hit with a guillotine or transfer over to that are more effective submissions. For that reason, it's a solid B tier. It has everything that you want in a B tier. It is a readily accessible submission. It is a viable submission. You can use this submission to get into better areas in grappling. I mean, you have to put it in B tier. It's just not at A tier. Purely because if you mess up a guillotine, you have forfeited your entire position. Unless you have a mounted guillotine. But in that case, you forfeit your position if you mess up a guillotine. If you mess up a Kimura, you're not going to get punished for it. Knee bar. I had to look at that really quick. Knee bar. Tough. I'm going to say, there we go. High C tier. High C tier. The problem is if you mess up a knee bar, again, you've given up complete submission. It is I would say, borderline exotic in MMA to hit. What that means is, in actual grappling matches, it's not super rare. But in MMA, yes. There's just better submissions to hit. I will say this, though, and why I'm putting it above the heel hook. If you mess up a knee bar, you can, and if they turn away from you, so imagine I have the knee bar on you and they turn away, you can hit a calf slicer, another submission on here, and that's how a lot of calf slicers are, put into effect in MMA. It's off a failed knee bar. And for that reason, I'm going to say high C tier. You just give up and you risk so much of your position. It's more of a defensive submission anyways. What I mean by that is, if I'm on my back and I can enter into your legs, that's what I'm going to hit. And yeah, you can hit it, but at the same time, meh. The Americana. I know the Americana and Kimura are very similar, but you remember how I said about the Kimura grip? Yeah. You see, the reason the Americana is going to be in B tier over the knee bar and heel hook is because you are in a dominant position, and if I fail on the Americana, I'm just going to rain down elbows. If I fail on the Americana, I still have a good position to have. You can hit it from mount, you can hit it from side control. I guess you might be able to hit it off your back, it's just not super viable. A Kimura you can hit off your back. A Kimura you can hit from mount. You can hit it from, the amount of positions where a Kimura is viable, you can even hit a standing Kimura. Good luck hitting a standing Americana. It's just viable off more positions. The grip that you get with a Kimura is better than Americana, even though they're similar. The Americana is just not as viable as a submission, and it misses out on the A tier for that reason. The Anaconda choke. So the difference between an Anaconda and a Darce choke, if you aren't aware. So you see how Hamza is facing his opponent? In Anaconda choke, we're both facing the same direction. So, what do I think about this? I'm going to say C tier, honestly. Don't get me wrong, if you hit an Anaconda choke, I'm going to give you more praise because it is a cooler looking submission. But a Darce choke is just a little bit more dominant. And it's easier to capitalize on using a Darce choke to leverage into another position over an Anaconda. I guess you can go straight in the mount and you can hit an armbar off this side if you can settle in the mount, or you can go for an arm-in guillotine. But again, you can do that off a Darce choke and it's just easier. It is easier to get a Darce choke. Most of the time that I get an Anaconda, it's off a failed Darce choke. And vice versa, it goes both ways. If I fail a Darce choke, I'm going to an Anaconda, but if I fail a Darce choke, I can just take a better position and take them out. Again, better positionally. It's the same thing with Kimuras and Americanas, just a little bit better. Peruvian necktie. D tier, dude. You have to be you either have to be pretty exhausted or just bad at grappling to get caught in a Peruvian in the UFC. If you don't know what a Peruvian necktie is, it's where if you are in turtle, like you're on your knees and elbows, so you're already in a bad position. I could just go for the back and that's a better position anyways. I'm going to throw, I'm going to throw one leg behind your head and one leg across your back. As I have the grip, it's called a gable. As I have my gable grip across your trachea, I'm going to kick my bottom leg, and that's going to initiate the choke. What I'm is I'm pushing on your carotid, and I'm forcing a blood choke. That'll take place in around like 8 to 12 seconds. And to be fair, yeah, no, you could put somebody to sleep with a Peruvian, and it looks pretty cool. But if I'm off by just a millisecond, you're getting out of that, and I've lost position, and now I'm on my back. It's just not that viable in MMA. In jiu-jitsu, it's a little bit more viable. Still, it'd be hard not to put it into C tier. I hit a Peruvian one time in a tournament, and I was yelled at for it, like just not going for a Darce choke or an Anaconda, or even just an arm-in guillotine. I just wanted to hit a Peruvian one time. Ezekiel choke. It's classified as one of the most rare submissions in MMA, and it's for a reason. So who do you think is hitting the Ezekiel right now? The guy on bottom. If you get Ezekiel, you really need to rethink your career options. I know that sounds really mean. I'm being 100% honest with you. If you are an MMA fighter and get Ezekieled in a fight, you need to there's other ways to make money in life. This might not be for you. Because it is pretty hard to get an Ezekiel choke on somebody unless you just have a different type of strength in your hands. And even if you have that, it's pretty easy to defend an Ezekiel choke. Where I would argue it can be a little bit more difficult is if somebody hits an Ezekiel choke from mount, and even then, you can sweep them fairly easily. I say fairly, but like, relatively fairly. But if somebody Ezekiels you from bottom mount, the second most dominant position in the entirety of grappling, and you get submitted by somebody on their back, legitimately, you need to quit. You're done. You're done. Leave. Yeah, D tier. Honestly, yeah. No, but there's a reason why an Ezekiel choke is rare, because it's only ever been hit at heavyweight with Fedor Emelianenko and that one old dude who also shows up again in this tier list. Triangle. Okay. This is going to sound crazy. I'm going to say A tier. Why am I putting it at A tier? Hear me out. Hear me out. I am lumping in mounted triangles off your back, and inverted. Because there's different families of triangles, but they're all pretty much the same. Inverteds are exceptionally rare. Mounted is kind of rare. It's borderline common. Triangles are super common. If you have all of those together, it is an A-tier submission because you can hit Kimuras off of it. You can hit Americanas off of it. You can hit armbars off of it. If you fail a triangle, you can enter into the legs. The absolute worst thing that can happen to you is you fail the triangle and your opponent has to reset the pass. Or they've already passed into a side control, but it takes more energy to escape a triangle than it does to throw up a triangle. Because what they have to do to escape is they have to use their entire body to rotate or correct their posture. All you have to do is cut that angle and flex your legs. That's all you have to do. I know it sounds simple, and if it is that simple, why don't people hit it more often? Because everybody knows how to hit a triangle. Everybody, that is one of the most basic submissions to hit. It looks fancy if you've never grappled before. I am telling you, it is fairly basic, and that is why it can be defended. But if you never saw a triangle before in your life, you are getting triangled 100%. Anybody who has done jiu-jitsu, you were triangled in the first week. I guarantee you. We all were triangled. Also, probably, I think this is the only submission on here that I've been put to sleep by. The triangle choke. It comes on quick. Also a blood choke. A tier, easily. Arm triangle. Arm triangle is different from triangle. Arm, triangle. Triangle. There's a difference. I'm going to say a very, very high B tier. Borderline A tier, actually. I might change that, but let me cook. So, actually, no, B tier, because the only way that you can hit a arm triangle, unless you're fighting somebody who's really, really bad, is you have to start off in either side control or full mount, get the arm across, cinch up your grip, and go into side control. I know you can hit it from mount, and it has happened before, but that's also a pretty rare one. It's borderline a different choke. But you are going from position to position, and if they are able to collect one of your legs and get a lockdown, they can escape out of it. An arm triangle is more complicated than a leg triangle. It just is. And it feels weird because this looks simpler. This is easier than that. And for that reason, like that barrier to entry and the amount of things that need to go right for you to hit this, I'm going to say B tier, just below A tier. The calf slicer. It's a C tier. It's a C tier. I would argue below, actually, slightly above the... Let me move this up. Okay. Armbar is bottom of C tier, followed by the Anaconda choke, followed by heel hook. I gotta put this ahead. I'm sorry. Heel hooks are just so damaging, dude. That's a career ender. So the most well-known calf slicer in the UFC, although it is most definitely not... It's like not the only, but it is one of the few, is the calf slicer by Charles Oliveira. This hurts. It hurts so much, dude. If anybody wants to tell you it's just a pain thing, no, they will blow out your knee if they really flex. And the way this grip is in, so what he has, his foot is trapped on his opponent's almost groin, if not like chest area, depends on how long your opponent's leg is. The shin bone is going to be straight in the pit of your knee. He is going to either have a triangle or he's going to be kicking on his Achilles tendon to put pressure on the front of your kneecap. And then he has a gable grip around your torso, and he is flexing, and that's going to blow your knee out of place. Incredibly painful. If you hit this, amazing. Like, you are going to be on an ESPN MMA highlight reel because of how cool it is for somebody to hit this. There's different positions you can hit it in, but you can hit better submissions off of it. It's just a cool, exotic submission, but C tier, that's not super viable when we get up here. Von Flue, D tier. It's a rare submission. It's similar enough to an arm triangle that most arm triangles start off as a Von Flue, and then their opponent corrects themselves and gets arm triangled. Why is a Von Flue in D tier, though? You want to know why it's rare? Because... for you to get Von Flue choke, your grappling IQ's down here. Here's a little tip for anybody who doesn't know. Never hold on to a guillotine when your opponent has passed your guard. There's a lot worse things that could happen to you. Von Flue is probably the nicest one. Worst case scenario, he's going to Kimura you off this guillotine, and he's going to break your arm. This is nice. This is the nice version. Because the reason that people don't get Von Flued as much anymore is because they realize that you can avoid getting Von Flued simply by just putting your hand up. There is nothing holding his hand here. He is just going to put his hand up. If you do that, there's a way for you to escape this. But yeah, Von Flue is a D tier. It's a cool submission, yeah. But you're doing it because your opponent's bad. It's not a submission of skill. It's a submission of your dude's just as bad. The Twister. Okay. I want to say either top of D tier or I'm going to say very bottom of C tier just because of how cool it is. And there is no not tapping to a twister, bro. You will break your spine if you do not tap to it. However, most of the time that somebody hits a twister, it's off a failed rear naked choke, or they just want to do it for style points. Bryce Mitchell, Korean Zombie, I know there's a few more. If not, like maybe that's it. I'm trying to think about it. But yeah, Twister's probably a C tier. It was made by Eddie Bravo. 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, that's where he's from. It's a nice submission. It's just not super viable here. You have to go out of your way to hit a twister when you could just hit a rear naked choke, which is an S tier submission. It's easier to hit that over the C tier. The Bulldog choke. Rare choke. You have to be so strong to pull this off. And one of the times that it was pulled off successfully is also like pretty controversial because Robbie Lawler also said that he didn't tap. So I would be hard pressed not like, and the reason I'm putting it at the bottom of C tier, even behind the twister, even though this is technically more viable, is because you can hit more submissions off of this than that. You have to hit it off a turtle, and for that, and if you fail a bulldog choke, you're getting your back taken, and you can hit just about everything else off of this. So you're risking a lot just for a little bit of style points. I actually can't see. Oh, north-south choke, D tier. You pretty much have to be either a heavyweight to hit it. In this picture, I don't even think he actually hit it in this, but this was the closest thing I can find for it. I believe there's only been like 3 north-south chokes in MMA. Because it is exceptionally hard to hit if you do not have a hefty weight advantage on your opponent, which pretty much makes it a heavyweight exclusive submission, because everybody is close to the same weight. For that reason, D tier, again, you can hit better submissions off of it. It's just not that viable, and it's just not that cool. Let me get a closer look. Oh, the Gogoplata. Cool submission. Nick Diaz hit this, but not in the UFC. Therefore, I had to find a different photo of it. I'm going to say in D tier, purely because a ankle lock. Most people aren't going to tap to an ankle lock. You're not going to win a championship fight off an ankle lock. You're just not. A Gogoplata will strangle you unconscious, and you can use a Gogoplata to take mount. But again, hasn't been hit in the UFC because it's hard. It's really difficult to hit a Gogoplata. The Omoplata, not really any relation. I know those sound similar. They're not really connected. But an Omoplata, if you hit a Omoplata on somebody, you have daddied them. Like they were made. Okay, like it's hard to come back from getting Omoplated. It takes a lot of skill to hit an omoplata in MMA when you can just hit other things. But you need to give yourself a little badge of honor if you are able to hit this. Fairly rare, I guess, because most of the time when people go for an omoplata, they just get into a different submission. I don't even think this guy managed to hit it. I think he did this and was able to take side control and hit something else. So, I'm going to say C tier. I put it above a Gogoplata purely because you can use this to leverage into many more positions, and it is easier to hit an Oma than it is to hit a Gogoplata. Yeah, I think I'm pretty fair on that one. Scarf hold, D tier. If you get scarf hold, if you tap to a scarf hold in MMA or like even jiu-jitsu, you need to get good. This is your sign to get good. A scarf hold is pretty much just shoulder presser. Like, don't get me wrong. If you're fighting somebody that is just dense like a brick, yeah, you might tap to this. The dude who is famous for hitting Ezekiel's in MMA, and the first dude to ever hit an Ezekiel in MMA outside of Fedor, he is famous for hitting this because this is also super rare. So good on him for hitting rare submissions, but guess what? He's also in heavyweight. And when somebody says I'm a heavyweight submission artist, I always squint my eyes at it purely because, well, how good are they at grappling, though? Like, let's be real here. How good are the grapplers at heavyweight, like pound for pound skill-wise? Not super skilled. There has to be either a pretty good weight discrepancy or your technique has to be on point. And even if you do hit a scarf hold, there's just better submissions you can hit from the same position. It's just not super viable. Look up scarf hold MMA. It's not great. The toe hold. I'm going to say this is probably the least viable of all. I had a little bit of a filming error while doing this video. So instead of filming the entire thing and trying to do it all in one take again, I'm just going to add this little bit. So the one thing I missed was the toe hold. I ended up putting in D tier. It's just the least viable of all of the submissions involving the legs. Purely because you have to rely on your opponent either messing up as they're leaving or going for their own leg lock and messing up, and you're able to capitalize with a toe hold. Which really doesn't happen a lot most of the time. If they're going to go for an ankle lock and they have, not ankle lock, go for a leg lock and they have the head start on you, they're going to be able to get their leg lock off before you get your toe hold off. It's just this doesn't work. And for that reason, goes in D tier. I think I got everything fairly accurate on here. I think, yeah, rear naked choke just being the most as iconic as it is has to go in S tier. And I think I did pretty good. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. If you enjoy this content, please consider a like, comment, subscribe. And if you have a tier list that you want me to do, please put it in the comment section below. I'll look at it. And adios, guys. Have a good one.